Welcome. I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist Professor Robert Patman, and this is Global Insight. For 3 decades, the country of Chile has been South America's good news story, but that seems to have come to a violent end. Welcome, Robert.
Good morning, Bruce.
For years, Chile had stability, but now there's been large demonstrations and violent demonstrations. What went wrong in Chile?
I think short-term and long-term factors. I think there's been a crisis waiting to happen in Chile for some time. The country's gone through austerity. It's had mounting inequality. The country's done very well. It's the 5th most prosperous economy in Latin America. But the distribution of that wealth has remained remarkably uneven. And the short-term trigger was about 2 weeks ago, there was an attempt to increase metro prices. And that led to an explosive reaction. And what started out as protests against increase in prices of metro travel has quickly escalated into a range of protests right across the country to take into issues such as mounting inequality. And so that's the background, really. It's a convergence, really, of long-term discontent, factors making for long-term discontent, and short-term triggering, once again, price rises, and many people feeling that a relatively small elite have done very well out the current situation.
How is that playing out now?
Well, it's playing out now because what's happened is, as you indicated in your opening remarks, something like 5,000 people have been detained through participating in protests. 15 people have been killed. It's a serious situation, clearly. Armed soldiers have been on the streets. And President Sebastián Pinero made a bit of a blunder on Monday when he spoke about a war going on with people on the streets. He's rowed back that comment now. And on Tuesday, he had a meeting with some opposition leaders, and he's produced a social contract package. Amongst other things, he's promising to institute a minimum wage, raise state pensions, and also adjust the tax rate so the better off pay more tax. And I think what the government's now hoping with this social contract initiative, which is just being tabled, it will diffuse some of the riots and protests we've seen.
What's the implications for the international community, including New Zealand?
I think they're profound. And I think Chile has demonstrated once again that in a globalised era where people are more and more interconnected through communications, discontent, whether it be over an unfair distribution of political power, such as we're seeing in Hong Kong, people protesting about the prospect of one party monopolising power, or an unfair distribution of economic power, can lead to explosive consequences. In a sense, people who are disadvantaged in the 21st century have more means to express their discontent. And so even a country which has been doing well like Chile by Latin American standards, nevertheless, economic growth every year doesn't, unless how should I put it, is distributed to a wider audience, wider number of people, it could still sow the seeds of an uprising, and that's apparently what's occurring.
What are the signs that we can look for us looking on? What are the signs that Chile is stepping back from the brink or stepping over the edge?
I think the signs that things are improving would be clearly a de-escalation of the protests and the need for less police and troops on the streets. And the other thing is, a second factor which is closely related to that will be the fact that the government, President Sebastián Pinero, is actually delivering on the package of measures he's promised. Make no mistake about this. This is a massive victory for the protesters if the government says it's going to do what it says. And in many respects, Pinero represents what is wrong in the eyes of the protesters with Chile. He was the person who introduced, he's a right-of-centre politician, he's a billionaire, he's a person who introduced the first credit card into Chile, made his fortune that way, And I think he's recognised that the current situation, and he said so quite explicitly in a televised broadcast, the current situation is not sustainable, and there has to be a greater share of Chile's wealth amongst its people. So if he can make good, if he can walk the talk, then I think there's a chance that Chile can avert a continuing confrontation. I think it's important that Chile does avert that confrontation because, as many of us are aware, it was only 3 decades ago that Chile threw off a military dictatorship led by General Pinochet and moved towards liberal democracy. And it'll be a shame if a liberal democracy cannot resolve this issue in a way that's more equitable and fairer to more people.
Thanks, Robert. And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Ciao.